Good evening, everyone out there in virtual train land. How are you tonight? And welcome to another Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wiggin, and we're talking some Genesis GP9s tonight. So I hope you're looking forward to this as much as I am. Let's see who's joining us out here tonight. We've got Cornell Custom Trains, Tyler, Donnie, MTG, Charles, Bradley, Abel, Canadian Locomotive Logistics, DG Model Works is in the house, George Emmett, Mark Williams, Ian and Owen and Forrest, Daylight Dave, Cirrus, and Steven. So thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to try a slightly different format tonight, and we're going to concentrate just on the Genesis GP9s. And if time allows, we'll answer a few of your questions. So if you see anything while I'm talking about the GP9s, be sure to stick around and ask those questions at the end of the broadcast. And also, don't forget, we're going to be doing an Athearn Extra this month, and we're going to be talking in depth with the GP9s, and we're going to have a special guest, Janik from development, who put a ton of investment and time and research into these, is going to be joining us, and he's got some great background on these. But tonight we're going to talk about the prototype, we're going to talk about the models, and before we get started, let's do one more round of shout outs here. So we've got David, Keegan, Andy, Alan. We've got Glenn, Reading Area Rail Fan, and Ian, Ron, and Joseph, Ronald, Stephen, Tim, and Harold. So thanks for joining us tonight. I really am glad that you guys are here. If you missed us on Friday, you probably noticed that things look a little different. We've got a new logo. We did a rebranding relaunch this past Friday. What that means basically for you is we simplified the line. We've made things easier for you. And so now you have Athearn, and you have Athearn Genesis, and you have Athearn Roundhouse. And we'll be talking more about that in the coming months. And you'll start seeing some changes that's going to make picking out that next locomotive or rolling stock that much easier for you. So let's get started. So tonight we're going to be talking about the Genesis line, and specifically we're going to be talking about the Athearn Genesis GP9s. So here we are. Okay. So, we've offered the GP9 before, but the thing that makes this different is because every time we come out with a GP9, they're not only are they road name specific, but they are number specific as well. So that's what we've got here. And this was put in by a lot of requests. So let's get started. This is 2873. A little background on these units. During the 1970s, the Southern Pacific went through an ambitious task of rebuilding their GP9s, and they call it the GRIP program. Now, this program included new wiring, new main generator, complete rebuild of the prime mover with new parts, improved battery box doors, removed rear light packages in some cases, and we'll talk about that. And a small batch of these GP9s were renumbered into the 2868 to 2899 class. Demoted to switchers to save maintenance costs, this class included rebuilt and non-rebuilt units. So if you're a fan of the 80s and even the 90s, and you want a first generation 4-axle unit, this is what you're going to want to look at. So here we have 2873. And a couple of things to look at here. 2873, this is a phase 2 switcher class, rebuilt R. Now, pay attention here. The signal lights on both ends, rear mounted fuel fillers, blank pilots, large SP-style road numbers, and number boards. And we're offering 2873, this is exciting, which retained its full light package, which was kind of rare after the 1980s. And it's currently enjoying its retirement in the Northern California Museum. It may be the last locomotive in this scheme still operating out of a large batch of SP GP9Es. Only 9 were painted into these colors. And I've got a really cool picture here. This came in from White River Publications, thanks to Tony Cook. Here's 2873 now. Let's zoom in on that. It's got a little bit of weathering there to it. Let's see how it's retained its light package. And this would be towards the late 80s, possibly into the 1990s. Now that's one of 4 of the SP Kodachromes that we're going to be offering. Here's another one. This is 3370. So you'll see that there's a little bit of differences here. This is a phase 2 rebuild. No signal lights on this one. This is an XT and an O. It has the rear-mounted fuel fillers, modified catch-style pilots. It does have the beacon, as you can see on the short hood there. It has the large SP-style numbers with the Santa Fe style number boards. So there you go, 3370. Here's a cool prototype picture. This was taken in 1990. Still in pretty good shape, considering these were painted in the mid-80s. But just a little bit of weathering, and this would look great in your yard on your layout. So coming up next, 3792. And again, since these are road number specific, we're having some issues here. Okay, I apologize for that. We had some technical difficulties with the PC tonight. We're still on 2873. Okay, so there is the prototype picture I was telling you about. I'm going to zoom in on this. Here's some of the weathering I was telling you about. Now, here's the light package I was telling you about earlier. Now, remember, 2873 is the one that's currently at the Northern California Railway Museum. So it retained that paint all these years. Here's 3370 that we were talking about earlier. And 3370, like I said, this is a rebuild. This is an X, T, and NO. Rear-mounted fuel fillers, modified catch-style pilots, and look at the beacon you've got there. Subtle differences between the two. And we've got that prototype picture I promised you earlier. Here it is, 1990, February 11th, 1990. Relatively in good shape. I mean, there's some weathering there. There's a little bit of rust by the battery box. Definitely some soot on the top of the unit, but overall, relatively in clean shape for its age. Now 3792, this is a phase 2. This is another one of the rebuilds. This has a modified front signal light, rear-mounted fuel fillers, modified catch-style pilots. It's a flat dynamic fan brake. Let's zoom in on that so you can see what I'm talking about. Look at sometimes they call these pancake. Quite often Jeep 7s, Jeep 9s, if they had a dynamic brake fan, they would be domed. This one's flat. So that's an interesting detail to note. This has small Santa Fe style numbers and number boards. Let's remember, this was in anticipation of both the Santa Fe and the Southern Pacific into merging, and a merger that never happened. So up next, and this is another one of the lines that was heavily requested, but the Seaboard Coast Line. After 1967, a merger of the Atlantic Coast Line and the Seaboard Airline, a new paint scheme of black with yellow stripes was developed for the Rhodes diesels. However, repainting such a large roster of locomotives would take time. As an interim measure, SCL lettering and or logos were applied to many of the SAL painted units to denote new ownership. And this was often known as the split image scheme. This relettering operation included several examples of the Rhodes GP9 units, which are depicted in this run. They remained this way until repainted or retired. Many probably retired. So the first one we have here is number 1006. This has a Mars type headlights. It's got the Nathan M3 horn with all chimes forward, tall MU stands, and the SCL logo here on the cab. So you zoom in here, you can see those MU stands quite a bit taller. This is one of those paint schemes, you either like it or you don't. I've heard both sides. Some people really like this paint scheme, others not a fan. But if you're a Seaboard Coast Line fan, you're probably going to want to add these to your collection. So look at the difference in variation here. It's very subtle. I'll go back just in case you missed it. Small numbers on the underneath the cab for 1006 and the SCL stylized logo on the cab. We go to the next unit, unit 1045. There is no Seaboard Coast Line logo, and the numbers are larger and directly underneath the cab window. So this one here is 1045. This has a Leslie S3K horn, and it has the short MUs. You can see right here. I'll zoom in. The other ones had those taller pedestal style. This has the shorter MUs. This has the pile style headlights as well. The other one had a Mars type of headlight. Not the, and Janet's gonna find some really cool information about that I'll wait and let him share on the Athearn Extra coming up. So 1049, this one has a Nathan M3 horn. All the chimes are forward, as you can see here. It has the short MU stands and the early pile headlights. So each one of these locomotives is different, denoting where it came from. You can see those subtle differences. Here's 1006, 1045, and 1049. So again, this was one a lot of folks were asking for, and if you're a modeler of the Seaboard Coast Line in the 70s, you're probably going to want to pick these up for your layout. So here's one that I bet a lot of you guys are surprised that we did. The Northern Alberta Railways, they rostered 11 of these GP9s. They were numbered 201 to 211. The paint scheme depicted here was in use from 1965 to 1975. The road was jointly owned by CP and the CN until 1981, when CN bought out CP's shares of ownership. NAR GP9s could be found leading both freight and, with a little bit of help of a steam generator car, passenger trains. So we're offering this in two numbers. I mean, three different numbers here. Cool paint scheme. Relatively short period in this paint scheme, but still one I bet you a lot of you guys didn't think we were going to offer, but it was one that the crew had a lot of fun researching. So another one that we had requests for, and that was the CNO, Chesapeake and Ohio. Now, these are going to be basically as they were when they were delivered. And a little background on these, between 1955 and 57, CNO bought 363 GP9s. These units were the backbone of the fleet, used on both road trains as well as local service. In the mid-1960s, C&O adopted a new simplified paint scheme with the large C&O initials on the long hood, although the purchase of newer, higher horsepower units displaced many of these Jeep 9s to secondary service. Many units were retired in this version of C&O dress, and these road numbers lasted into the mid-1980s, which is really... that's a neat fact. They didn't get the chassis paint scheme. They actually stayed in this paint scheme for quite a while. And so we chose this run and this paint scheme and these numbers to allow you as the C&O modeler, the chassis modeler, a wider range in which to run these locomotives. So as you can see, you can run these into the 70s. There's an ACI panel right here on the frame. Typically what we do is we have that as an extra detail part that you can add. It's usually in a poly bag within the Genesis packaging. So if you want to go earlier, you could. 6173. And although it's a very simple paint scheme, it was during the era where a lot of railroads, a lot of the class ones were simplifying their paint schemes, mainly for maintenance and cost reasons. But a lot of folks really enjoy this paint scheme. Now here's one that a lot of people were really excited about, and that's the Milwaukee Road units. And we're doing two different versions. We're doing the billboard version, we're doing the as-delivered version. There's something that I want to point out that we've never done in the Genesis line before, at least with the GP9s, and that is a spotting feature that was common to the Milwaukee Road, these number plates. Milwaukee Road went ahead and had these metal plates attached to the long hood of the GP9s, and that's a detail that hasn't really been done before, and it was something that we wanted to do on this run. And again, we had a lot of fans of the Milwaukee Road use our product suggestion email and say, hey, can you do a run of these? And so we did. So Milwaukee Road, they received their last and largest order, 52 in all, numbers 280 to 331 in the spring and summer of 1959. This batch of GP9s was initially assigned to priority transcontinental freight service, but as you can probably guess, by the 1960s, bigger horsepower came out, and these were pushed down to branch and smaller lines. Now, number 297, which I'll show here now, represents the billboard paint scheme. And 282 that we have here, this is the as delivered, what it would have looked in the spring, summer of 1959. Subtle differences. And then 316 again, as delivered paint scheme. Now, a couple of things I want to show. Let's go back to 282. So here's 282 as delivered, okay? You have the number plate. That's going to be consistent with all three of them. Dynamic brakes. You have the snow plow and dual horns. So you have the dual horns and the snow plow. We get to the next version, the billboard version, okay? A little bit different on this one. The billboard paint scheme, like I said, number plate, that's going to be consistent throughout all three. This one has dynamic brakes, snow plow, and dual horns. Then when we get to our next unit, 316, you've got the dynamic brakes, but you got the snow plow on both ends. Again, dual horns. So again, a lot of folks have been asking for these, and so we're really happy to introduce these in this run. Now here's another one. Honestly, probably one of my favorite paint schemes. I know Janik has talked about this paint scheme quite a bit. It's one that we've been wanting to do for a while. We did get some requests on this, and this is a fun scheme for a couple of reasons. This was a new paint scheme when even Burlington Northern came about. Great Northern had spent a lot of money and budget getting this paint scheme and developing a new logo, new font, and they nicknamed this the Big Sky Blue because of the links to Montana. So in 1967, they adopted this paint scheme. This was painted on many of their locomotives. And the cool thing about the Great Northern paint scheme and the Big Sky Blue is a lot of these lasted into the BN era because they were freshly painted. 67, 1970 is when BN comes about. So a lot of these avoided the paint shop for quite a while. So here we have 682, and these are pretty much as delivered, but there are some changes I want to talk about here. This is 682. This has snowplows on both ends. And as you probably know, the front on these is the long hood. If you look real carefully, you can see the F denoting the front. So these ran long nose first. The bell is mounted in the center of the long hood, which is different. Also look and see where the horns are placed. They were placed on top of the winterization hatch. That's 682. And of course, at this time, Great Northern started using these plaques that they would put on their handrails and stanchions. So here's 683. This has snowplows on both ends. This is non-dynamic. Bell is mounted on the center of the long hood, just like the previous unit. And then 688, now we have dynamic brakes. And this one has the bell mounted on the long hood all the way onto the end right here. Because obviously they couldn't put the bell where the dynamic brake is, so they moved it up front. We look at sister unit number 690, and that's going to have the same setup. So if you're it doesn't matter if you're a Great Northern modeler, if you're modeling early BN, even into the mid 70s, this paint scheme lasted quite a while because again, it was a new paint scheme in 1967. So Great Northern didn't even get a chance to paint their entire fleet before becoming part of Burlington Northern. And a little bit of using some decals from some aftermarket sources, you can patch these for BN. And these would be great for, branch line operations, yard operations, any of those. But we're offering these four for you Great Northern, Burlington Northern fans. So there you have it. There is our Genesis GP9s. So at this time, I've got time for some questions. And again, these are going to be available with or without DCC and sound. So if you buy the DCC with sound, they're going to come with a Tsunami 2. If they have lighting features like the SP with the beacon and DCC and sound, the lighting features will work. And these are available for pre-order. You've got until April 29th. So you've got just about a month, maybe a little bit over a month to pre-order these. I guarantee you, based on previous experience, if you have not pre-ordered one of these, many of these roads are going to go quick. Now, the GP9s that we just announced in the spring of 21, they were available in the stores from about February to early March, and we are almost completely sold out. So if you are looking for one of those GP9s, you may be lucky and find one in one of the hobby shops, but for the most part, they sold out quick. So the GP9s They always sell out quick, and we've had some really great reactions on the roads that were selected this time. And again, that was mainly because of what you folks told us. We did these because of popular requests. So if I were you, I would pre-order these locomotives and don't have to hunt for them when they get here next year. Now, they're, like I said, you have until April 29th to pre-order those, and they'll probably be here next May. All right, let's see what kind of questions we've got. Got time for a few questions here. Let's go back a little bit since I might have missed it while we were switching screens. Rick says, I'd love to see some GP9 CNW without the stripes in the front of the root of the 400 on the side, like I had seen as a kid in the 1980s. Well, Rick, that sounds like a great suggestion. And what I would do is I would go to our Contact Us page on our Athearn.com, select the product suggestion email, and put that in there. And that may be something that we do in the future. Ian would like to see us someday do the version with the large NAR decals on the sides. Well, that's a possibility now that we've done these. So that's a possibility. Joel's excited about the C&Os. Kevin's excited about those. David's excited about those. Joel's excited about the Milwaukee Road. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good roads in this run. It's going to be hard for you to choose just one. Let's see what else we've got here. Rick's happy about Milwaukee Road. Zach, you caught us. I bet John might like the Milwaukee Road ones. I don't know. You think? He might like those as much as I like the Boston and Maine ones. Yeah, the Milwaukee Road ones, it was time. It was definitely time to offer these. We had a lot of requests. Harold's already got plans for his Milwaukee Road Jeep 9. Would look great with the Sioux Line patch. Are you talking, yeah, the Bandits? The Bandit paint scheme. I agree, Terry. I agree. Let's see. Frederick says those GP9s, they were eventually renumbered in the 1900 class and beyond. Yep. And Frederick, you'd also know with those former Great Northern locomotives, once they were painted in Cascade Green, you'd also know that those barricade stripes that BN was famous for would go on the long hood. They'd be on the front of the long hood, showing that that is the front end. Any Northern Pacific GP9s in the future? I don't see why not. We did the GP18s in the Northern Pacific, so it's a possibility. Are you a Trey man? Says, hey, thank you for the Jeep 9s and SP Kodachrome. I ordered 2 of them and 1 in Milwaukee Road. Well, thank you. You know, these are roads that you guys have requested. So Paul, those were the ones that we talked about last year, and those are in hobby shops right now. There's some 3 different Boston and Maine Jeep9s. So Glenn's asking, just curious on the GP9 and the GN paint, are the panels a separate part? If you're talking about the sign that Great Northern applied to their units, yeah, that's a separate part to simulate that. And during this era, that's what Great Northern did. They had these panels that were painted up with Rocky, the stylized Rocky, and the Great Northern, and they were applied to the stanchions and handrails. That will be a separate part on these locomotives. Are the dynamic hatches prototypical to the model? Yes. So anything in the Genesis line, if you order a fleet of these, I'm talking about, say, the Milwaukee Road. If a specific unit has a dynamic brake or a winterization hatch, it's going to be included. If it did not, it won't be included. Anything that's within the Athearn Genesis line, it's going to be not only road name specific, but number specific. Just because they all had the same paint scheme in the same era doesn't always necessarily mean they had the same details, such as the same bell or the horns or winterization hatches and so on. So the developers at Athearn, they strive to make sure that each locomotive number is as specific as possible to its actual prototype. All right, so I got time for 1, maybe 2 more questions. I'm scrolling through here. A lot of guys on here tonight. Will you guys do any more 75th anniversary stuff? No, we did that last year. In fact, if you pre-ordered last year, some of those items have come in already or will be coming in. We're going on to the next 75 years now. So nothing new in the 75th anniversary paint. Eric says, congratulations to the SCL and Milwaukee fans. It stinks that Athearn refused to paint up the SPNS Jeep9s in the as-delivered paint scheme. Don't give up hope yet, Eric. If we get enough requests for that, we will certainly do it. Now, the reason why it hasn't been done so far is maybe because we haven't had the requests. And honestly, and maybe unfairly so, the SPNS doesn't quite seem to have as much of a fan base as, say, Great Northern or Northern Pacific or CB&Q from that list of lines. That doesn't mean we won't ever do it, but if we do get enough requests for those, we will do them. So don't lose faith. Can we see some Ferromix and BNF stuff with mesh on the windows like they do in Mexico? Well, that's a possibility. That'll be another detail part that we'll have to add to the models, but if we get enough requests for those, and I know a lot of modern guys are looking for that kind of stuff, it is definitely a possibility. I can tell you that while I'm doing this show, our developers, mainly on the West Coast, they are watching this and they're watching your comments, but also keep in mind too, if there's something you really want to see, please use that product suggestion email because that gets right to them. All right, one more question. Adam wants to know CPSD 70 ACUs. Okay. Well, we did some of those. We did them in the current scheme. We did them in the heritage schemes, 2 different versions of the heritage schemes. We did the naval version and we did the Army version. So if you haven't been able to find one of those, they are kind of scarce. Will we do the other military versions? Yes. When will we announce them? I don't have any dates right now, but we will be doing those. That's brand new tooling. We've only had 1 release so far. So yeah, we'll definitely do another release of those. All right, so looks like we've got some pretty good comments out here, but I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. Remember, we'll go deeper dive into these locomotives plus everything else in this for this month on the Athearn Extra. One thing I do want to share with you guys before I head out is we are getting ready to head to Denver, Colorado. We're going to be going to the Rocky Mountain Train Show. Myself and another representative will be there. So looking forward to getting out there, seeing some train shows, talking to you guys. Stop by the booth. We got a brand new booth all ready to go. We're going to have some stuff that's in stock to show you, and we're going to have some things that will soon be in stock, as well as talking about the stuff that we've been talking about here today. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're also on TikTok now. And while you're at it, go on over to our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notifications of new videos like this uploaded weekly. Until next time, I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, be safe, and maybe I'll see you in Denver. Until next time, everybody, high greens. Take care, everyone.